shocked MPs have spent today conducting a post-mortem into how last night's Commons debate descended into such rancour and anger. Many MPs, including some Conservatives, have blamed Boris Johnson for using divisive language. There was fury when he said the concerns of female MPs about their safety was humbug. This evening, the Prime Minister has said he deplores threats to MPs, but he insisted that he should be able to describe the law which will force him to ask for an extension to Brexit if he can't get a deal as the Surrender Act. Our political editor, Gary Gibbon, is here. Well, here we are talking about the Surrender Act. Is that what he wants?
I think it is. There's just been a political cabinet this afternoon at which I think there was an attempt to make sure ministers held their nerve as bits of the strategy looked like they were falling off, and they had a presentation on polling and the election, and they were told that this phrase Surrender Act is really cutting through to voters and works with a great chunk of voters when they hear it. And they're saying that that's the reason why the opposition are trying to gag them. The opposition, of course, say that's not why they're trying to drop phrases like that. It's because the warlike language blurs with other, more extreme warlike language, and that helps to support even more anger out there and violence. But the Tories have a problem with people in their own backyard on this. One cabinet minister told me he felt sick to his stomach last night when he was listening to the Prime Minister's rhetoric. And one Tory MP who's a lawyer told me he was worried for his professional reputation being connected with the party right now. The other development that has been running on today is this question about whether the government will implement the law which Parliament passed, which makes sure that, or tries to make sure that Boris Johnson has no option. If he hasn't got a deal, he's got to have a Brexit extension. Senior government sources I've been speaking to say they really are pretty confident that they've found a loophole in that bill. And the fact that it just requires the Prime Minister to do a certain thing on a certain day, write that letter on a certain day, doesn't preclude doing things on other days, which might negate it. And into this whole discussion tonight, Sir John Major, the former Prime Minister, has waded in. He's about to give a speech talking about how he thinks there is all sorts of chicanery afoot over trying to avoid what that Act of Parliament was trying to get Boris Johnson to do. And for good measure, he's said that he thinks the current strategy is reckless and divisive. And that's all without what's been going on in there on the second day of the Parliament that was recalled by the Supreme Court, where today they were pretty much focused on yesterday in Parliament.
It's a disgrace!
He should be absolutely ashamed of himself.
I've never heard such humbug in all my life.
An MP concerned about death threats mocked by the Prime Minister. All part of an evening in the Commons last night when things seemed to turn darker. The anger was frothing and the provocation, for some, intolerable.
The best way to honour the memory of Jo Cox would be, I think, to get Brexit done.
The Prime Minister was back this morning for meetings, including one with Tory MPs. He told them he'd carry on talking about opponents surrendering and capitulating. The MP who said that stoked death threats got support from many others.
A cabinet minister came up to me this morning and said he was absolutely horrified, and he said, "I will sort it for you, Paula." He said the Prime Minister doesn't realise what time you've had with threats and abuse. I said, well, you know, the Prime Minister was talking to the nation yesterday and his response was horrific.
Yesterday, the House did itself no credit. There was an atmosphere in the chamber worse than any I've known in my 22 years in the House.
MPs held a special session on the language used in political debate.
It is completely and utterly a part of a strategy designed by somebody to harm and cause hatred in our country. When I hear of my friend's murder and the way that it has made me and my colleagues feel, and feel scared, described as humbug, I actually don't feel anger towards the Prime Minister. I feel pity for those of you who still have to toe his line.
I'm afraid it was yesterday She was the person I could hear screaming the loudest from her bench.
At best, the Prime Minister's answers to some of the questions last night were deeply insensitive. But the concern that many of us have is that there is a deliberate strategy of division and confrontation.
He's not the only MP thinking they might be being set up for a brittle general election campaign.
They are specifically ramping up an election campaign. They have designed it, they've tested it, they will have polled it. That is specifically to create division and fear.
And we will be, you know, in People versus Parliament, we will be the poster boys and girls of Parliament, of this awful place that's trying to frustrate the people's will.
I've only been there 4 years. Boris Johnson's been in and out like a yo-yo over the decades.
I totally deplore any threats to anybody, particularly female MPs. And a lot of work is being done to stop that and to give people the security that they need.
Okay.
But I do think it's important that in the House of Commons I should be able to talk about the Surrender Bill and the Surrender Act in the way that I did.
But some MPs feel militaristic language feeds the abuse and menace, peppering placards and shouts on the street from both sides of the Brexit debate. And there's concern that a Tory strategy to set voters against the political class and its institutions could end badly.
If you're going to be ruthless, if you're going to cut corners, you have to actually win and not create more opposition to yourself.
And you worry that's exactly what might be happening now?
It might be happening now.
Well, it seems to me that Parliament and the courts and the civil service have all been collateral in the headlong rush to a no-deal Brexit which nobody voted for. It seems a very odd strategy.
If Boris Johnson thinks he can rebuild those things sometime soon, tack back towards the middle ground.
Well, we'll all be left picking up the pieces, but there's only so much damage you can do before it becomes terminal. It's a bit like political climate change.
In Brussels, the EU Brexit negotiator didn't comment on yesterday in Parliament.
Surprise!
But said he was still waiting for revised Brexit proposals from Britain.
We are still ready to work on any new legal and operational proposal in the UK.
And Boris Johnson says real progress is being made. Is he telling the truth? Is he exaggerating?
We are still waiting to work.
We are still waiting to work, Michel Barnier said. This afternoon, Labour MP Jess Phillips' constituency office in Birmingham was attacked by a man reported to have been shouting fascist. Police said they'd arrested a man on suspicion of a public order offence.
Well, earlier I spoke to the former Conservative leader and prominent Brexiteer Ian Duncan Smith. I asked him how appropriate it was for the Prime Minister to say that the best way to honour Jo Cox's memory was to complete Brexit.
I think there's been a lot of nonsense talked about it. It was robust, it was angry, but I've been here 27 years and I've seen worse, angrier debates. Insults were, yes, I have. Insults were flying across the floor from Labour, calling people cheats, liars, you know, they're fascists. I mean, I have to tell you, it's a bit of the pot calling the kettle black at all, and I think those who were trying to bring her in were trying to use her in a sense, and that was wrong.
You mean Labour was trying to
Well, we shouldn't either side. You know, there are many Conservative MPs who have died, been killed by terrorists in the course of their time in Parliament. I can think of Erin Neve and many others. I would no more dream of bringing them into a debate like that to make a point. The truth is, there was very fundamental disagreement across the floor last night. But, you know, get out of Parliament and go out on the streets and you will find now there is a growing sense of anger.
And a lot of MPs say that when they go about their business, they feel that anger. And that was the point Paula Sheriff, the Labour MP, was trying to make when she said that people quoted back at her the words of the Prime Minister, surrender, betrayal, and she feels scared. And he dismissed that by saying it's all humbug.
No, the words surrender and betrayal are not threatening words. They are words that describe as adjectives what many of the British people feel about the nature of what has been going on here. Now, it's very important.
Seeing everything as a battle,
I have had a ton of stuff. Accusatory from a hard left endlessly. I've had death threats. I've had all of that stuff at me. I've been accused of being a murderer. All these things from people who have no idea how to debate. It is not alone that on one side of the House they have had attacks. This goes on forever. It went on long before Brexit, I have to tell you. So let's get this into context. It's absolutely wrong for anybody to use that kind of language, attack individual MPs, make them feel scared. Of course it is, as it is for any other member of the public.
I just want to read you just some tweets from the daughter of a Labour MP, Ellie Cooper. She says, I'm scared. I'm scared when I scroll through the replies to her tweets, her mum's tweets, calling her a liar and a traitor. I'm scared when our house gets fitted with panic buttons, industrial locking doors and explosive bags to catch the mail. Of course Brexit is contentious. Of course people have strong opinions. But what we need now is a Prime Minister who can stand up and say, yes, I want to deliver Brexit, but regardless of my position, this inflammatory and aggressive language needs to stop. Boris Johnson, it's your job to unite the country. How do you react to that?
Well, I'm sure she feels sincerely those sentiments, and I'm sorry that she feels that. All I am simply come back to my simple statement is I did not hear last night anything that was said in the course of the debate from Boris Johnson that was set out to be inflammatory. He made some clear...
A humbug, that's...
No, well, is that an inflammatory language?
Well, when the Labour MP had set out her fears and he said it was a load of humbug.
No, he was talking about the raising of this as though it was him that had created this atmosphere. He has not created that atmosphere.
Would you feel differently if your daughter had put out a series of tweets like that?
Listen, I'm not going to get involved in this personal stuff. I have children, all right? So the idea that somehow I'm hard-hearted to this, I'm not. But the honest truth is I have faced a lot of threats in my time, and I'm not prepared to have this thrown back as though it suddenly only happens to a Labour MP because now they're feeling frightened. They're angry out there, not because Boris Johnson has taken up post, but because Parliament itself made a promise. They voted for it massively. We will deliver. And now they have blocked every single opportunity to get out. That is where the problem arises. I'm a great believer. Deal with the cause, not the symptom.
Ian Duncan-Smith, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Well, opposition MPs have claimed Boris Johnson is sticking to his inflammatory rhetoric because focus groups have shown it's popular with the voters he needs to win an election. So I asked the leader of the Lib Dems, Jo Swinson, if she had focus grouped her party's bollocks to Brexit slogan and found it equally effective.
To be fair, I remember getting asked about it and I did think that it would get the message across. I also think that it's a word within our language which, yeah, is slightly on the naughty side, but doesn't carry with it the same kind of malice. And I think most people can totally tell the difference. I mean, the word humbug is not the problem, it's the context in which it was used. Entirely inappropriate response to the genuine fear that Paula Sheriff had outlined.
Jo Swinson talking to us down at Westminster. Now, last night, we showed how Dutch exporters are preparing for a no-deal Brexit and reported on concerns within the NHS that a lack of preparation could hit medical supplies. Tonight, we heard from people working in the fishing industry in Wales. The Welsh Government has warned that crashing out of the EU without a deal could have a devastating effect on jobs. But, as Andy Davies found out, the threat of tariffs, transportation delays and new levels of bureaucracy are not dampening workers' desire to quit the EU.
Fishguard off the Pembrokeshire coast earlier this week. It is dawn, and across the bay fishermen head out to retrieve their catch. The shrill ructions of Westminster a distant cry. It is a picture of calm. But one which the Welsh Government claims belies a gathering storm and an industry facing potential collapse. Around 2,000 vessels fish for shellfish along the UK's coastline. Most of the product is exported to EU countries.
2 kilos of spiders, wasn't it? Were they large spiders or small spiders out of Eddie's? Large, 2.
Neris Edwards runs a shellfish export business. Once a week she's here buying off local fishermen, grading the catch, and then loading it onto a truck sent here by her Spanish customer. What produce are you loading up this morning?
This morning we have lobsters, brown crabs, spider crab, velvets, prawns, winkles, a little bit of everything with a shell on.
This is an industry that the Welsh Government has been warning could be in real trouble in the event of a no-deal Brexit. For one thing, this is live shellfish being transported across the continent. And the fear is that if there are any significant delays at the border, then it could prove very costly. More could die in transit and the quality of the seafood diminished.
If you ask me which sector keeps me awake at night in a no-deal Brexit, it would be our fishing industry, certainly, because of the fact that it is so perishable and it just cannot afford to sit on a port side for any length of time at all.
7 boxes of lobster, yeah, Jono?
Nerys Edwards has been flat out gearing up for a no-deal Brexit and a whole new export regime. To sell to the EU without a Brexit deal, she'll need to provide a new catch certificate detailing the background to each catch she buys off each fisherman, and then an export health certificate signed off by an environmental health officer for every consignment, amongst many other new requirements.
It's going to be a lot of extra work for you if it comes to a no deal.
It's meant to employing another member of staff.
So we have 52 certificates. We can do that because it will...
And if her Spanish clients, no fans apparently of Brexit, stop sending their truck to her, she says she'll go to them. And is even spending thousands on kitting out a new truck to do so.
This is the internals of the lorry.
Brexit has come at quite a cost for someone who voted for it.
Have you quantified how much extra you're now spending at the moment?
About 40,000.
Preparing for a no-deal Brexit?
Yeah.
£40,000?
Yeah.
Did you imagine that's what you might be spending when you voted leave?
No.
Do you regret voting leave?
Not at all. Not at all.
Because some people might find that very strange, that you voted leave.
Yes.
And you're now in a situation where you are spending a huge amount of money.
I knew when I voted leave that it would directly affect my business, both my businesses, the farming and the shellfish. But I also believe that I'm not the important person here, that the whole nation is important. So for the greater good is why I voted out. And for my grandchildren and their futures, that's why I voted out.
Without a deal, the UK's shellfish sector could be hit with tariffs totalling up to £41 million a year, claimed a recent report. It would be critically undermined, asserts the Welsh Government. But this is an industry in which antipathy towards the EU runs deep. I asked this fisherman if he was worried about Brexit.
Worried about it not happening, worried about it getting shafted on it. That's the only worry that there is. Is it not coming off? Or we're ended up with a deal that's going to make it worse for us, that ties us still to the EU.
But don't you need a deal? Don't
No,
you need a deal
we don't need a
get rid
deal.
of the tariffs that might hit you?
I'm willing, personally, to go through that to get to the other side.
And we'll do the best we can to make it work. I have absolutely no intention of failing my fishermen whatsoever. And if we all take care of each other, it'll turn around. You know, we're all expecting a bumpy year, but we all think it's going to get better.
And so another load of live lobster and crab departs West Wales for Spain, a weekly routine upon which livelihoods depend, trying to shield itself against the unpredictable headwinds of a possible no-deal Brexit.
And Andy Davis now joins us live from Cardiff. Andy, the government there in Cardiff this very day has actually been reiterating warnings about a no deal.
Yes, another very bleak assessment from the Welsh Government about a no-deal Brexit. They claim it would see the Welsh economy smaller by around 9% in 15 years' time. On the shellfish industry, incidentally, the UK government have countered by saying they're putting in robust measures to ensure that the industry thrives post-Brexit. But I have to say, as we've been looking into it this week, what's emerged is a major glitch in the system. Take Nerys Edwards, who you saw in that report, operating out of a lorry on the quayside. Now, if there is a no-deal Brexit, for her to sell to the European Union, she will need what's called an approval number. And right now, the local authority won't give her that approval number. It appears to be something to do with EU regulations about exports of fish and animal products. Now, it might be that it's because she operates out of a lorry, not a building. It's not clear. And however technical and complex this is, the point is it may have serious implications, because we've been told tonight that there are dozens of other businesses around the UK who may be affected by this and who may have to change their models of operating very significantly if they want to trade within the EU post a no-deal Brexit. Someone in the fishing sector said to us tonight that they've been banging their head on the floor for months trying to find a way around this. DEFRA, the Welsh Government, we've been speaking to people in those organisations, they've said they are trying their best to find a solution. But as it stands right now, someone like Nerys Edwards, who, as you saw in that report, has worked so hard to prepare for a no-deal Brexit, if she doesn't get that approval number, then she will not, in the event of a no-deal Brexit, be able to trade in the European Union. And as she pointed out to us, there are around 50 fishing families in Pembrokeshire who rely on her to do just that.